Let's look at the order of the paper in your text block. You have 2 pieces of cardstock on the outside. Then you have that decorative sheet that you have just cut down to size. Now I want to make sure that you put the decorative sheet with the decoration facing the inside of your text. Okay? Then you are going to put about, I don't know, 8 to 10 of those sheets that I've given you on the inside. You will take your tab, you will put that in the center like so, and then you're going to go ahead and clamp that together. All right. And we want to make sure, well, let me test this first. We want to make sure that those holes are going in the center of the spine of your text block. Okay. Do you see how we're testing that? All right. And there we have it. So what you're going to have to do after you put this all together is you're going to have to poke holes through this again. And this part isn't quite as easy. Okay, you're poking your holes all the way through your text block that we're making. Okay, and you might need to use pliers for this because it's kind of hard to get through. All right, there we go. And then remember, when we are doing a pamphlet stitch, you want to take the tab away before you sew it. All right. Now, what I suggest on this is I suggest that you start with your thread on the outside of your book this time. Whoops. And it appears that I have poked a hole in my finger. You're going to have to wait a minute while I get a Band-Aid. Okay, I got my Band-Aid and I'm ready to try it again. All right, so I'm going to take my thread, okay, and I want a single strand, not a double strand. We use double strand for a lot of pages and we don't have a lot of pages here. I'm going to start on the outside of my book this time. And I'm going to go through the middle, correct? And I'm going to grab the tail of that book, or pardon me, the tail of that thread on the outside with my fingers. I'm going to go up to my hole on the top, okay? I'm going to go over the middle and to the very bottom, okay? I've got one more space to fill in here, right? And so I am going to go to that middle space and voila, I have my 3-hole pamphlet stitch. And I know all of you are, that's just like old hat to you. So I want you to see, once I have my 2 tails on the outside of the book, I will knot them, correct? And I'll pull them taut, but I won't pull them so tight that they rip through my book. Okay, so I have that pamphlet stitch sewn in, and now I will just chop off the excess, and I can do that with my X-Acto knife. All right, so there we go. We have our 2 cardstocks, our decorative sheet, which is facing to the inside of the book, and then we have our text pages. And this makes our text block for the book. As you see, that's this part of the book we're making. Okay, so now what we're going to do, and I might suggest this to all of you. There's going to be a little creep. Do you see that? Remember when we put too many pages together in one wad, then we get creep, right? So what you're going to do before you move on, you might want to take your triangle, line it up on the top of your book. And as you know, I like to stand up and over what I'm doing if I'm cutting. I have my X-Acto knife and I will cut off the excess creep pages. because I know that just drives you crazy. Okay, so as you can see, that's the excess, and voila, look, completely flush. And I know that you love completely flush books right there. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna chop that creep off. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is we are going to turn the top piece of cardstock back on itself like so. Do you see how I'm doing that? Okay. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut a tab into that top cardstock. Okay. Let's measure how big we want that tab. All right. That tab is, it is 2 inches wide. Okay. And then I'll show you how to cut these little squares in there, or pardon me, not squares, triangles. Okay. So what we're going to do, we folded this back, and we only want one page of the cardstock in there, right? We don't want to take both of the cardstocks. You leave one cardstock with the book, and one of the pages turned back upon itself. Okay. I take my pencil, I mark out. Ooh, am I concentrating? Yes. Okay, there we go. I mark out 2 inches. Okay. And then I'm going to take my triangle and my X-Acto knife with the sharp blade. Okay. And I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to cut that excess off. Okay. And then I don't want a lot of bulk in my book right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I want to go back and show you this. I am going to cut a triangle out of the head and the tail. This has been turned in. You can't see that because that's been turned in. I'm going to cut a triangle out there. So my book cloth will easily wrap into this area. There is not going to be a lot of excess bulk with your cardstock there. Okay. The only thing I want to warn you about here is when you're taking this triangle out, do not cut into the sewn part of your pamphlet stitch. Okay. Because then your entire book will fall apart. All right. So let me show you how I do that. I want to point out to you, if my pamphlet stitch starts right there, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out about that much. So I'm leaving about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch away from the point where I've stitched. Okay, so I preserve the stitching. I'm going to do that same thing on this other edge. Wow. Hard to do. It's like walking and chewing gum, right? Okay. Now you notice it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. We just need to get the bulk out of there. Okay. And I'm not going to take that X-Acto knife. I'm going to take my nice one, and I take my triangle, and I'm going to cut that excess off right there. Do you see how I'm doing that? Dink. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Oh, it's wiggling a little bit, huh? But that's going to be okay. That little bit of excess is all right. Okay. Now, let me show you what your next step is going to be. You will want to glue your boards on the outside here, okay? But before we do that, you are going to want to measure 1/4 of an inch in. And let me show you this model. I love this. As you can see, this model has been around the block, okay? So you want your board to be 1/4 of an inch in from the edge of your spine, okay? So what you're going to do now, you have this cut on both sides, And you are going to take your see-through ruler and measure down 1/4 of an inch on each side. And that is where you're going to be gluing on your cover. Okay. So our next step is going to be to paint glue here, but you have to put a waxy in between first, right? So waxy, glue up to that line, take the waxy away, and put your cover on top like so. Do you see how I did that? So let's get started with some glue, okay? I will see you in a minute here.